Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of To The Point. Hope you're all doing well on this Sunday afternoon. Lots to dive into today. The Players' Championship ongoing this weekend in beautiful Florida. Getting into the action yesterday, I watched about 8 hours of it, so I have lots to talk about the tournament. And I did talk last week about how the field's diminished. No John Rahm, no Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson. You go through the live names that aren't at the tournament. But what I will say is the course itself makes it interesting. There's just certain courses on the PGA Tour. For me, I love this one. RBC Heritage in Hilton Head, South Carolina is my favorite course on the PGA Tour. I could see myself living in California, in Carolina. So that'd be another reason for me loving that course. But there's just certain courses you watch golf on a Saturday and on a Sunday. The Masters, of course, comes to mind. And really, this is the last big event before the Masters. And the Masters starts in a few weeks on April 11th, Thursday, April 11th. So that is coming up. But TPC Sawgrass, Wyndham Clark had a 4-stroke lead going into play on Saturday. And he didn't have a horrible day, all things considered. He shot 2 under. And compared to guys like Nick Taylor, Corey Connors, a couple Canadians who struggled yesterday, who were in contention and are not in contention going into their respective rounds today. But Wyndham Clark shot at 2 under. He had a couple bogeys. He put it into the water on 17. But you look up and go, Brian Harman, the Open Championship winner last year, shoots 8 under par, has 1 bogey on the day, all just right down the middle, putting it within 5 feet multiple times for birdie. He made a long eagle putt. We saw a couple incredible things. Maverick McNeely, who's tied for 4th going into today, hold out from the fairway. Scotty Scheffler ended up with 3 birdies to end his day. So we saw some impressive performances, to say the least. But Wyndham Clark shoots 2 under, and now he enters Sunday in 2nd place because Xander Schauffele goes 7 under par. He's had a phenomenal tournament so far. Former gold medalist at the Olympics, and he's also a 7-time winner on the PGA Tour, but this would 100% be the biggest victory of his career. He has not won a major, but he certainly could. He's an extremely good golfer. But going into their rounds today, and they'll be playing with each other once again. Brian Harman will be playing with Maverick McNeely. Matt Fitzpatrick is linked up with Sahith Theegala. So we got some great final pairings. But I have a lot of trust. I have a lot of belief in Wyndham Clark. And while John Rahm and Koepka, and we know the names, are no longer on the PGA Tour, so you don't get to see them play. You see them play 4 times a year at the majors. Well, last year, Wyndham Clark played against Brooks Koepka, and he played against John Rahm and all these names, and he won the U.S. Open. He beat them all. And he won the Wells Fargo. And he won earlier this year at Pebble Beach, which was an elevated event. He is becoming one of the best players in the world. His putting, which wasn't great yesterday, is normally on par. He's a clutch putter. He can drive the ball over 350 yards occasionally. He's incredibly strong. He's just a complete golfer. There's not much that Wyndham Clark cannot do. And to me, he's emerging as one of the best players on the PGA Tour. He's emerging as one of the best golfers in the world, period, regardless of the field. And Scotty Scheffler, who's dealing with a neck issue, is fantastic. No debate. And He's 5 strokes off the lead, but Scottie Scheffler could 100% go on a run today where he's making birdie after birdie, and he's looking phenomenal, and he ends up winning the Players, and he's trying to become the first player to ever repeat as champion at the Players. Has not happened ever in the history of the tournament, which is quite incredible. And he's T6 going in, and he's playing with Nate Lashley this afternoon after winning last week at the Arnold Palmer. So, to me, Wyndham Clark is right there with Rory, Rory is having another tournament where round to round you don't know what you're going to get. Frustration, lack of confidence. He's currently tied for 14th. He just started his day. And it's just kind of up and down results for him. Nick Taylor, 8 under par, as is Corey Connors, as is Mac Hughes, as all those guys are on the course right now. This is a big tournament because it's the largest prize money of the year inside the PGA Tour. But you have the Valspar next week in Copperhead, Florida, which does not have a great field. It's a lesser tournament. A lot of guys take it off. Been playing a lot. Played the Arnold Palmer. You're playing a couple events. This one, not a loaded group of guys. Xander, although is scheduled to play. And you have the Texas Children's Houston Open. Then you go into April with the Valero, Texas, and you have the Masters. So a couple weeks before the Masters, a couple weeks to figure your game out, get ready, get set for that, the biggest tournament of the year. But while Wyndham Clark's only won one major, but when you put that into context, Justin Thomas, who's a great golfer, has only won 2. Rory McIlroy has only won 4. Wyndham Clark can compete with the best of them because he's more efficient. He's more consistent than Justin Thomas, than Rory McIlroy over the last year and a half. But it's great theater. Some great players. Again, with all the sports this weekend, have not caught up on Full Swing yet. I'm watching 2 episodes so far. But seeing some of these guys take chances at this course, drive the ball as far as they do, the water that makes this such a tricky golf course to play. The 17th Island Green. To get a tournament where you have Xander Schauffele and Wyndham Clark in the final group competing for the title, it doesn't get much better than this. 2 great golfers, and then you have Scheffler lurking behind him and Matty Fitzpatrick, who's also a major winner, who got hot late yesterday. Rough start to the day, but he found it. And Brian Harman, who another guy who's kind of come out of nowhere, but after winning that major, he stayed consistent. He has really good results. He can drive it way farther than you might think for a guy of his stature. Maverick McNeely has never won on the PGA Tour, 121 events, but he's a really good golfer. He's solid. He's 4 strokes off the lead. He 100% could win this golf tournament. So lots to focus on today. Sahith Theegala, 12 under, potentially. He won late last year, so he got his first win on the PGA Tour. So I expect it to be a really fun day. A fun day of golf at a great golf course. And I can't wait to watch it all today. And we'll recap it on Tuesday. Because this week, schedule, podcast today, obviously. Tuesday, we're going to do a podcast. I'm going to doing a podcast Wednesday night previewing the NCAA tournament. Brackets will be out. I'll talk about teams to look out for. We'll talk about the betting lines. That'll be on Wednesday. Then podcast Friday morning, different start time, where we'll recap day 1, look ahead to day 2, the upsets, the madness, all of that crazy stuff. So that's the schedule over this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday morning. And the NCAA tournament starts on Tuesday with the first 4, which are really playing games to get to the actual tournament. But you can put the first 4 on TV. It's content. People watch it. People like me get ready for the tournament. But this weekend is all about conference championships. And for teams like Purdue, North Carolina, Houston, you know you're going to be number 1 seeds. You know you're going into the tournament, but you're playing, you'd like to be the ACC champion or the Big East champion. You like to win your conference tournament before you go into the actual NCAA tournament to play for the national championship. But this weekend has been quite chaotic because it goes round 1, round 2, you get to the quarterfinal, semifinal, then obviously the final game. For higher seeds throughout the year, you don't have to play till the quarterfinal. For instance, Duke, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kansas, Creighton all had byes before the quarterfinal. Meaning the teams that they're playing in all likelihood to play 2 games before they get to meet them, meaning you get to sit there, you get to have some rest. And the teams that win, if you go all the way, you win 5 games in 5 days to win your conference tournament. That's a lot of basketball. Well, NC State is the ACC champions. They defeated Duke, they defeated Virginia, and they defeated their in-state rival North Carolina last night to win the ACC tournament. They were not guaranteed to make the tournament, but now that they've won, you get an automatic bid, and they are going to the dance. 5 wins, 5 days, a bubble team, and they beat 2 of the top-ranked schools in the country. An overtime win in there. They had to do a lot to overcome a North Carolina team that's really good, but they battled, knocking down some clutch threes. They have this center. You look at him and go, how's he playing Division I basketball? Not really built like a guy that's in great shape, but he is awesome. And they just have scores that can come up. Burns, this is the Burns center. 20 points, 4 rebounds, 7 assists. Phenomenal, 9 for 12 from the floor. He was phenomenal. You also had Horn, the guard. He had 29 points, 9 for 15 shooting, 9 for 11 from the free-throw line. So they get hot, an NC State team. They win, automatic bid. Pac-12, Oregon wins the Pac-12 title. And they play Colorado. They were 23-11 on the season. Not a great season. This is also the final Pac-12 tournament, so they get the last one. They get to go to the big dance. Scored 42 points in the second half. Along the way, Oregon, you look at them, they beat Oregon State. They beat Arizona, who might be a number 1 seed. They crushed Arizona by 20. You get by Colorado. You beat Cal. They had a hell of a run, Oregon. So 2 teams, not necessarily going to the tournament, win their conference championships to advance. But then you had UConn. They win the Big East. And they beat Marquette, and Marquette, pretty decent school. UConn goes 31-3 in the regular season. They obviously are the reigning, defending national champions. They lose a lot of players, but you look, they get Newton, the guard, had 13 and 10 yesterday. I like Spencer, the guard is always a great player. Klingon, their center, 22 points, 16 boards, 7 for 12 from the field. They have the most depth. They're the best team. They won the tournament last year. They win the Big East. And they didn't play in an easy conference. Marquette's a good team. They get by them. Big 12, heavy favorite going into that tournament was Houston. Another school that's had a phenomenal year. And they get crushed 69-41 by Iowa State. The Cyclones shoot 41% from three, while Houston shot 18%. 50% from the floor, 27% for Houston. 11 turnovers from Houston. You'd rather lose now than in the tournament, certainly. But an awful game. Shed, the guard, their best player, 3 for 17 from the floor. Woof. Sharp, 2 for 9. 2 for 8 done off the bench. They couldn't make a shot. Really good defense from the Cyclones. A pretty decent season for them. They get to go into the tournament. You also look around, the SEC, a team I like to potentially go on a little deep run. The Florida Gators. They get to the final of the SEC tournament. They're playing today, this afternoon, a couple minutes against Auburn. Auburn will be the heavy favorite in that game. You can get Florida plus 5.5 right now. Good team, can shoot, moves up and down the floor extremely well. But I have this thing about me betting. I don't like seeing teams win their conference tournament and then go into the NCAA. It normally doesn't work out. It's better if you lose. And you looked at it. These teams all lost before getting to the semifinal of their conference tournament. Duke, Kansas, Tennessee, Creighton, all out. All didn't even play to the semifinal. Kansas sat out their 2 best players for their conference tournament. Duke lost to NC State. Tennessee got crushed by Texas A&M. Creighton loses to Marquette. I mean, something else. Doesn't mean they're going to be bad in the tournament. Doesn't mean that it's going to correlate, but Duke doesn't have a great team this year. Kansas loaded up to have a great team, but they have some injuries, and there's a lot of chaos at Kansas, and I don't really love their group. Tennessee's had one of their better teams under Rick Barnes in a long time, but Connect is a great player, but other than that, he can get you 40 a game if you need it. But the rest of them, can they score with the big schools? Creighton has Kalkbrenner, their center. He's great. And I like Creighton as a team. I think they're a threat come tournament time. But you still have that tournament game today. You have Wisconsin playing Illinois in the Big Ten final. Purdue lost yesterday in overtime to the Badgers. Purdue, and a team I don't trust at all in the tournament. They were a 1 seed last year. They lost in the first round. Only one of 2 schools ever to be a 1 seed to lose to a 16 at the NCAA tournament, the other being Virginia. So they have a rough go with Wisconsin, Illinois. Today, Illinois was down big in parts of that game yesterday. They rally to get back and win that game against Nebraska, pardon me. Nebraska's a pretty good school. 97-88, high-scoring game. But tonight, the bracket will be unveiled. Still have smaller schools like Duquesne VCU Atlantic 10 Championship, winner of that automatic bid. Temple University of Alabama Birmingham for the AAC, winner of that automatic bid. So still some tournament games, still lots to be decided, but the tournament's right around the corner. And really, one thing that really helped the NCAA tournament was the Fab Five at Michigan. And Michigan is a basketball program that had been struggling for a while, searching for answers, trying to get it back to notoriety. Their football program, one of the best in the country. And obviously they won the national championship back in January. Well, for the past 5 years, Juwan Howard has been the head coach at Michigan. And he hasn't had a whole lot of great success. And there's been a fair share of controversy. He got into an altercation where he punched an opposing coach after a game, and he was suspended for that. He put his son on the team, and his son hasn't exactly been a great basketball player. That didn't really get looked on well by the players or by the staff at Michigan. That was a controversy. But then you just have the results where you have a great player in Hunter Dickinson, and he decides to leave Michigan to go to Kansas because he believes he has a better chance of having success. Wasn't a crazy read. Michigan's not going to the tournament. Kansas is. So credit to him. But on Friday, the Michigan Wolverines fired Juwan Howard. And he is royalty in Michigan. He left the NBA, where he was an assistant under Eric Spoelstra, to go back to his alma mater. But he was 8-24 this season. So it was the worst season at Michigan in 60 years, finishing last in the Big Ten for the first time since 1966, 1967. Wolverines lost their final 9 games, including Wednesday's Big Ten tournament defeat to Penn State to finish 8-24 and 3-17 in the Big Ten. Woof. Michigan still owes Juwan $3 million, but that's an accounting error at Michigan. Their boosters will quickly get rid of that. But I mean, they love him there, and now you have to question. He was an assistant under Spoelstra, but when he finished his playing career in Miami, jumped on the bench, and he was on those teams with LeBron, D. Wade, Chris Bosh, winning rings as an assistant coach. And you leave for Michigan. I'm just wondering where his career goes now as a head coach. Because I remember at the time he left Michigan, and you had experts in the basketball field saying, oh, Juwan Howard could be a head coach in the NBA in the not too distant future if he just stayed. You work under Spoelstra, you work under, it used to always happen to Greg Popovich. You are under the ear of one of the great coaches. You are in that system. You're in the winning environment. You are going to get a job for a couple weeks, but he got the job. So I think that there's some definite truth to those rumors. Also, I don't think it hurts that Juwan Howard has a name value. He has a brand that you can look at and go, oh, it's Juwan Howard. Longtime NBAer, Fab Five, good guy. Everybody likes him. LeBron can give him an endorsement, whatever it might be. But he failed at Michigan. They never went on a deep run in the tournament. Never got to an Elite Eight. Never got to a Final Four. One of his top recruits leaves the program. He punches a coach. All these different things. Nothing to brag. And while the football program with Jim Harbaugh is struggling, Harbaugh looks like he's going to be fired, and you turn that into 3 straight years of winning the Big Ten and winning a national championship in 2024. I mean, that's just the difference. And I think there is a comparison when you're out seeing the basketball program at Michigan, seeing the hockey program that's been quite good for a while, and you see the basketball, and it's not living up to the rest of the sports, to the expectations of the Michigan Wolverines. So Juwan Howard is out. They're searching for a new head coach. I do think he'll coach again, likely on an NBA bench as an assistant. He's only 51. So, has options. Could he go back to the Heat as an assistant coach where he had a lot of success? I understand taking the job. It's Michigan. You love Michigan. It just didn't work out. But yeah, a failure for sure. I think he'd admit that. He thought it would go better than it did. But Michigan is not a big basketball program. It just isn't. Michigan, Ohio State, they're schools, but they're not big schools. They're not Duke. They're not Kansas. They're not UConn. UConn's won 3 titles in the last 12 years. Men's basketball. Women's, they won 6 and 12, I believe. They were that good with Gio Auriemma. UConn is nothing in football. It's an afterthought. It should be a D2 school, really. It's a guarantee. They had 1 win total last year of Division I football at UConn. But they're the betting favorite, or I'll go on FanDuel right now. They should be. And if they're not, bet on them. But I expect them that they are now, that they won yesterday. Houston gets crushed. Houston never wins in the tournament. If you look at March Madness, futures, Connecticut is the betting favorite at plus 450 to win it all right now. Yeah. So, Final Four, Connecticut, same thing, minus 110 to reach the Final Four. Houston, Purdue, oof. We'll talk about it more on Wednesday night. There's a lot of top seeds that I do not have faith in, that I worry about. And I think we could see a lot. I think it's always March Madness. It's always craziness. I think it's going to be crazy again because I don't think a lot of top teams are going to get that far in the tournament because they aren't that much better than the rest. Like Iowa State's a pretty good team. They just are. They win the Pac, and the Pac-12, the Big 12 is a tough conference. You had to beat good schools to get there. Big 10, pretty good conference overall. There's some good schools there. ACC, Big East, tougher. You got Big East teams playing teams in the ACC. I think you'd see some problems. You can also on FanDuel, Michigan next head coach. Lamont Paris, plus 600. Dusty May, interesting name, plus 700. John Beilein, plus 750. Not going to happen. Chris Collins, plus 850. So just some things to monitor as we get closer to the NCAA tournament, which technically begins Tuesday night. But the 1 versus 16, those type matchups begin all day on Thursday for round 1. We had a minor UFC event this weekend back at the Apex. Tai Tuivasa, Marcin Tybura headlining. I watched it last night. I thought Bam Bam would get back in the winning column, landed some big shots in the first round, but Tybura got him to the ground, got the hooks in, gets the rear naked choke, and he put Tuivasa to sleep. That was Ty's 4th straight loss. And he's had a crazy UFC career. He started 3-0 in his UFC career, then dropped his next 3, then won 5 in a row, and now he's lost 4 in a row. He should drop outside of the top 10 in the rankings. And while he's still a fan favorite and he does the shoey and he's beloved, he's very much one-dimensional. He can hardly get down to the weight of 265.5 is the weight limit for the heavyweight division. And every time, he's a guy that has to cut weight to get there. So he doesn't keep himself in great shape. An impressive win for Tybura, who lost to Tom Aspinall back in July. So he gets back in the win column. But I thought he'd knock him out, but Tybura just was better. He got him there and he did not let him up. Did not want to go back to the striking game, and credit to him. Also on the card, massive upset. Alvin St. Preux. I don't think many people had him winning, but he did. Defeats Kennedy Njoku via a unanimous decision. 40 years old, back in the win column. Njoku had won 3 in a row prior to this fight. You could get him at plus 750, and he wins the fight outright. Incredible. I thought this would be his last fight of his UFC career. No, gets the victory. Gerald Meerschaert back in the win column with a choke on Brian Barberena, so he gets back in the win column. Christian Rodriguez moves up to bantamweight. He defeats Isaac Delgarian, I guess. I don't think he won the fight. They gave him the decision. I thought he lost the first 2 rounds. Clearly won the third. But that is up for interpretation. But Christian is a very good fighter and couldn't make the weight at 135. Now at 145 seems like a good weight class for him. But that wasn't the big news of the UFC weekend. We had been pontificating about UFC 301 for a while. Because you thought, okay, UFC 301, it's going to be in Brazil, early May. And who's going to main event that card? We thought, okay, well, Pantoja, flyweight champion. He's from Brazil. He speaks Portuguese. He has never fought in Brazil. It'd be nice to get him back over there. But the problem with that, this is really something, how good Pantoja is. He's a great fighter. Because I want to pull up his Sherdog, which if you want to get into fighting, you want to learn who beat who, what's his credentials, go to Sherdog and you'll find every fight of somebody's pro or even their amateur career. So Pantoja has beaten Brandon Royval twice. Beat him back in December, but has beaten him twice over the course of his career. Really dominated him in both. 5-round decision, beat him 2nd round back in 2021. So Royval, who's number 1 in the rankings, Pantoja's beaten twice. Do we want to do it a 3rd time? Not really. Moreno, he's beaten Moreno technically 3 times. Twice on The Ultimate Fighter and once in the UFC. Alex Perez, also in the rankings. He beat him in 1 minute and 31 seconds. Manel Kape, who's number 6 in the rankings, who has a fight booked, but Pantoja has already defeated him via unanimous decision. Pantoja's only lost July of 2020 in a long time. Loses to Askar Askarov. He got released from the UFC. He's fighting over in Russia. Not available. Matt Schnell in the rankings. Lost to Pantoja. Figueiredo, now a bantamweight. You go through it. He's gone through the entire flyweight division, beating everybody. So you go, who's Pantoja going to fight? You got to make this fight interesting. Royval, number 1, beat. Moreno, 2, beat. Albazi, we don't know where the hell he is. Injured, we think. Kara France, injured also. Doesn't get a fight. Nicolau, he's beat. Kape, beat. Mahayev, hasn't fought. Perez, beat. Tim Elliott. So it was really, Muhammad Mahayev fought 2 weeks ago. He got a victory. He didn't get a finish, but he won the fight. He's undefeated in fighting, undefeated in the UFC. Number 7 in the rankings. Will he get the look? No. Muhammad Mokaev has been put to the side for now by the UFC because it was announced yesterday Alejandro Pantoja will main event UFC 301 against Steve Erceg, an Australian who is 12-1, but prior to a few years ago, nobody knew who the hell he was. Beat Matt Schnell in early March via TKO. Fought Acosta, defeat in November 2011, got a victory there. He's fought 3 times in the UFC. And he's looked pretty fantastic in every fight because his boxing is phenomenal. He's as tough as nails, but he's not necessarily a brand name. He's not necessarily a guy that's proven a whole lot. He's number 10 in the rankings. But Pantoja said, I want somebody that's a fresh matchup. I've beaten everybody in this division. Give me Mokaev or give me Steve Erceg because I haven't fought them yet. And Steve Erceg is getting the opportunity. Mokaev was the easy answer because Mokaev he's been pushing for the title for a long time. He wanted to be the youngest UFC champion in UFC history. He obviously won't be. But he wanted to get an opportunity. He believed I can go beat Pantoja. But watching him his last fight, he was good, not great. He beat Alex Perez, who's a former champion, a good fighter. But I think there's fights for Mokaev that they want. This summer, they're having a card in Manchester. He lives in England. I think they could get him to fight Brandon Royval. They would be 100% down for that. Let's book that fight. These two have beef. These two don't like each other. A great fight could be a title eliminator for Royval. And if Mokaev wins that fight, you beat the number 1 ranked guy in the division. You are 100% next for the title. No doubt about it. And that makes sense. But I think they want to see him have one more fight against a really good opponent. Erceg is getting an opportunity that, say, Sean Strickland got. Sean Strickland became champion. I don't think that this is an automatic win for Pantoja. I think Pantoja is phenomenal. He's a great fighter. But anything can happen. And yes, he's 100% game and he can do a lot of different things. But in the fight game, so many things can happen. So many things can go wrong. And I'm trying to find that line for you guys on this fight on FanDuel, but I don't see it right now. Might not be out yet. Should be soon because I think Pantoja will be the heavy favorite. But again, Erceg has great boxing. He can knock people out cold like he did just a couple of weeks ago. So I'm glad they made this. I'm glad it's a fresh matchup. Pantoja gets to go fight in Brazil in front of his home crowd. He's a very entertaining fighter. The 125-pound division is my favorite division in the UFC, period. And that's fun. But then we got more news about UFC 301 yesterday. In a stunner to me, UFC Hall of Famer Jose Aldo, former champion, great, 37 years old, is returning to the sport. He will be back in early May in Brazil fighting Jonathan Martinez at 135 pounds. They reportedly wanted to get Aldo and Dominic Cruz to fight, which would have been fun. I will say, that would have been awesome because 2 legends of that division. Dominic Cruz hasn't fought in over a year. I don't know what the hell he's doing other than commentary every now and then. But Jose Aldo, 31-8, Fights Jonathan Martinez, who's a dangerous opponent, 19-4, good fighter, a lot of strong attributes. He's back. And, Aldo has had some incredible stuff. Fought McGregor, lost to him in 13 seconds, we know that. But he's beaten Frankie Edgar, fought Max Holloway twice, beat Jeremy Stevens, fought Alexander Volkanovski, Petr Yan. That fight really changed his career, if you ask me. He's beaten Marlo Cheeto Vera, Pedro Munoz, Rob Font. His last fight was against Merab Davishvili, where he retired. But this doesn't seem like a one-off to me. He's coming back for a reason. He is 37. But you're fighting Jonathan Martinez, who's 14th in the division. So if you win that fight, you're ranked. And there's a lot of fights that would be fun. I mean, I'd still love to see Dominic Cruz and him fight because they're two legends. They're two guys, two former champions. I mean, you could Figueiredo and him would be a fun fight. So this should be in all likelihood, will be the co-main event because he is so beloved over there. The crowd will go crazy for him. But Jose Aldo returns at UFC 301 after he did some boxing. I think he did 2 boxing matches after he retired. So he dabbled in boxing, but he's returning to mixed martial arts against Jonathan Martinez at UFC 301, the UFC Hall of Famer, Jose Aldo. And they also announced a large chunk of the card. And it's not the greatest pay-per-view card in the world, but you have $299, then $300. They're not going to be great. You have Michel Pereira against Mahmoud Muradov. And Muradov had a no contest in February where there was an accidental eye poke where his opponent caught him in the eye, so he didn't get to fight. He's going to return against Michel Pereira, who just fought last week at 299. He's dangerous. He's a dangerous opponent at 185. Clearly, he wanted to fight at home because he's taking a guy who's not ranked again, but he's from that area. He's another guy who is Brazilian, Portuguese. He gets to go fight at home. He's only 30 years old, and he is damn good, Michel Pereira. Light heavyweight fight. Anthony Smith, the legend, against Vitor Petrino. Petrino won back in March. Defeat Tyson Pedro. Pedro retired. Big step up in competition for Petrino. He's undefeated as a mixed martial artist. But you get to step in there with Anthony Smith, who's been up and down. 2023 fought 3 times. He won once, lost twice, losing to Khalil Roundtree and Johnny Walker. But he will take on anybody. It doesn't matter to him. He'll step in there, give the best fights, put on good performances. It's almost impossible to knock out. He has such a fighting spirit. So Anthony Smith, Vitor Petrino. Jack Shore, fun fighter at featherweight against Joanderson Brito. That'll be an under-the-radar fight, but Jack Tank Shore, one fight last year. He hasn't fought since March 2023. Had a nice knockout. He's good, and I think he needs to start fighting more so there's more notoriety with him. Middleweight, Paul Craig, Kea Bohadio, another guy from the area. He talks a big game. He's beaten some good guys. His last fight, he beat Abus Magomedov. He's getting in there with some of the best. Now he gets Paul Craig, a former title challenger at 205 pounds. Now he's down at $185. He wants to get into the rankings for the first time in his career. Let's see. Lightweight Els Brenner against Oralbai, fun fight. It's not loaded by any means, but it wasn't going to be. You got 2 awesome 300s, an awesome card. It just is. I don't know if it's as good as 299 from the top up, but you look at the prelims with like Prohaska, former champion against Rakic. Sterling, former champion against Calvin Kattar. Holly Holm, former champion, fighting against Kayla Harrison, making her UFC debut. Diego Lopez, Sadiq Youssef, that should be just crazy fun. Jalen Turner, Renato Moicano, love it. Jessica Andrade, former champion against Marina Rodriguez. Jim Miller, Bobby Green, two just top Gs. And then you got Cody No Love Garbrandt against Davison Figueiredo to open the show, two former champions. So 301, it'll be fine. Usually have great atmosphere in Brazil. So I'm looking forward to that. Again, Jose Aldo coming back. You get Michelle Pajeda, Pantoja, Urseg, fresh matchup. It's fine. And then in a couple weeks, the week before 300, April 6th, there's an event at the Apex scheduled to be Brendan Allen, the rising star from Louisiana, taking on Marvin Vettori, which would have been Brendan Allen's toughest opponent of his UFC career, bar none. But Marvin Vettori got hurt. He's had to pull out from the fight. And because this guy's just as tough as nails, and that's what Team Extreme Couture does, Chris Curtis, teammate of Sean Strickland, will be stepping in on short notice. He fought back in January, got a victory. He steps in the main event, finding Brendan Allen for the second time in his career. Chris Curtis beat Marc-Andre Barrio 2023, lost to Gaslam, no contest against Imavov. You lost to Hermanson. He's beaten Rodolfo Vieira. He beat Brendan Allen back in 2021 via TKO. So technically, Chris Curtis is going in with the momentum here. So we'll see. A rematch, Brendan Allen 23-5. Since that loss, he lost to Chris Curtis. Then he goes on in 2022. He beats Jocko by submission. Beats Jacob Malkoun, beats Sam Alvey, all in the same year. 2023, beats Paul Craig via submission, defeats Bruno Silva in the first round via submission. So he's on a run at middleweight. He's a dangerous opponent. He's game, Brendan Allen. So another Louisiana guy, just like Dustin Poirier, making a name for himself at the 185 pounds. So that he's not off the card. He's fighting Chris Curtis. Love it. The action man steps in on short notice to get a big opportunity to jump up in the rankings. Next weekend, another Apex show. Amanda Hebos against Thug Rose Namajunas. Carl Williams, Justin Tafa. Supposed to be Carl Williams against Junior Tafa, but Justin stepping in for his brother, who's injured. Cameron Saman against Peyton Talbot. Fun fight at bantamweight. Billy Q in the cage. You got a lot of last year's Ultimate Fighter guys. Kurt Hollabaugh, who won it, is back in the cage. He gets Trey Ogden. Cody Gibson, who is a runner-up, he gets Miles Johns at bantamweight as well. So a couple guys from that part of it. Decent little card next weekend. Back in front of a crowd in a couple weeks in Atlantic City. Aaron Blanchfield, Manon Farreau, Chris Weidman, Bruno Silva, Carlos Ulberg, Alonzo Menafield. Good little card. Petrosky. You got a good card. So, but the UFC's always making noise, always booking fights, things you don't expect to see. And I did not see Jose Aldo returning to mixed martial arts, but indeed he is at UFC 301. Which good for him. If he wants to keep fighting, keep fighting. Make that money. Okay. Let's pivot to the NFL. I want to start with Justin Fields. The Justin Fields saga has been ongoing for some time. Where's he going to go? What's the market for Justin Fields? Because you're like, well, Bears are going to draft first overall. We can all see it. They're not going to say it. But that's what they're doing. So we know that. Or could you could be you go to Seattle, you could go to these teams, right? You go through the list of teams and go, okay. I thought from Jump Street the Steelers made sense, but then they got Russell Wilson. So I said, well, now they got Russell Wilson, Kenny Pickett. That won't happen. So I closed the door on the Pittsburgh Steelers until they traded Pickett. But because it started really on Friday, because the Eagles acquired Kenny Pickett from Pittsburgh for pick 98 in the draft, which is a third rounder, and two 2025 seventh round picks. So Kenny Pickett gets a fresh start, was a first round pick from Pittsburgh, played his college ball at Pitt, but now he's from the Philly area. He rooted for the Eagles growing up, so he gets to go back up Jalen Hurts. That's good. So I'm like, okay, well, Justin Fields could go back up Russell Wilson, and they could compete for the job, because what Mike Tomlin said at his year-end presser, and there's coaches that just say bogus, that say bupkis, and they lie, and you're like, okay, in one ear, out the other. Mike Tomlin's not one of those coaches for me, because Mike Tomlin is a man that he doesn't lie, really. He said, next year we are going to have competition at the position. This year they didn't. It was Kenny Pickett walking in, and he got to do whatever. But he got hurt. Trubisky has come in. Trubisky sucks. You go to Mason Rudolph, figure out, wow, Mason Rudolph might actually be better than Kenny Pickett, which he was. So they decide we're going to offload. Mason Rudolph goes to Titans to back up Will Levis. Mitch Trubisky's back in Buffalo to back up Josh Allen. And we're going to ship Kenny Pickett to the Eagles. Okay. We have Russell Wilson, and we need a backup for him. And if I was the Steelers and if I could trade a 2025 sixth round pick with a fourth potentially with playing time, I would do it every time. Because Justin Fields is not a perfect prospect. Justin Fields has warts. But is he better than Kenny Pickett? Yes. Is he better than Mason Rudolph, than Will Levis, and I think a lot of these quarterbacks? Yes. He's one of the best 60 quarterbacks in the world, and he's higher on that list. I think he could be a starting quarterback in the league. The Chicago Bears won 7 games last year. Yes, they have the first overall pick, but it's not because they were that horrible. It's because Carolina made a stupid trade. The Bears screwed this up. The Bears, I understand you can't go in with Justin Fields and Caleb Williams. To start the season, I can get that. Because Caleb, I assume they'll take number 1 or they're taking Jane Daniels. But they're taking one of those two guys on April 25th. But you might say, well, it's not fair to Justin Fields. Well, life isn't fair. Players get cut. It's a business. It's not easy, but you do it. And Justin Fields probably doesn't want to be sitting in limbo. Probably doesn't want to be going to OTAs, training camp again with the Bears, knowing he doesn't have a chance to start. But there's this thing every year called training camp. And in training camp, players get injured. They fall wrong, they roll over on their ankle. Just stuff happens, right? And sometimes you might miss some time. You might miss a good chunk, right? For instance, this is just an example. Back in 2016, 2017, the Philadelphia Eagles had Sam Bradford and then second overall pick Carson Wentz on their roster. Sam Bradford was the starter the year before. Carson Wentz should take second overall. He's going to be our starter. He's our quarterback of the future. That was apparent. And I'm sure Sam Bradford wasn't thrilled to be there, but he was in Philly. Back, down the road, Minnesota. They're in training camp. They take Teddy Bridgewater, who's one of the last picks of the first round. He suffers one of the worst knee injuries in NFL history. Somehow he came back from it. But it was a gruesome knee injury where he needed multiple surgeries and he missed almost 2 seasons. Minnesota is going, oh shit. We just took this guy. We have a team that can win. What are we going to do? We can't throw away this season. So they called up the Eagles and they gave up a first rounder to get Sam Bradford because they were a desperate team and they needed a quarterback. He goes to Minnesota. They have a dreadful year. They don't make the playoffs. It doesn't work. But for Philly, it worked out. If the Bears hold on to Justin Fields and they wait for training camp or they wait for a team that goes, ugh, I don't really like our quarterbacks, or I'm expected to be good this year, I need somebody. Our guy just went down. I'm going to trade for Justin Fields. You would get more than a 2025 sixth round pick. They couldn't get a damn draft pick in this year's draft. They basically told the Steelers, okay, we just don't want him anymore. Please take him. The Steelers have to be idiots not to do this trade. It's a no-risk situation. They have him on the 4th year of a potential 5-year contract. They can play him this year where he makes a little over $3 million. So they're paying their quarterbacks a little over $4 million this year total in Wilson and Justin Fields. And if he doesn't work out, if he doesn't play, if they don't like him, if he doesn't fit, whatever it might be, they can decline his 5th-year option, and Justin Fields will become a free agent after the 2024-2025 season. He's gone from Pittsburgh. They paid him that little salary, but hands clean. If they exercise the 5th-year option, they will be due to pay him over $25 million 2025, 2026. But they don't have to exercise the 5th-year option, which I don't think they will because they don't know him yet. He hasn't proven enough yet. I think they're willing to say, if you play great, if you even get on the field this year, we will let you go to free agency and test it out because you basically just were a free agent and nobody wanted you. No team was willing to give up a draft pick to take you on. So it's a literal no-risk situation for the Steelers. Nothing but gain. They have 2 quarterbacks on their roster with something to prove. You have Russell Wilson, who's the cast-off from Denver. The proverbial asshole, nobody likes him, needs an office, full of himself, rich wife, this, that, and the other thing, and nobody really likes him. So you go, okay, we'll take Russell. And Mike Tomlin will try to bludgeon that ego and see if they can coexist. And if it doesn't work, it's $1.2 million. See ya, Russ. See ya, bye. Let's ride. For Justin Fields, you pay him $3 million to be your backup quarterback. Joe Flacco makes more money than Justin Fields. That's right. Joe Flacco makes more money as a backup quarterback than Justin Fields, so it doesn't matter. It's no money. $3 million. You don't pick up the 5th-year option, he's gone. The Steelers could have 2 new quarterbacks in 2025, 2026 than the ones they have now. Or they find something with one of them and he's their quarterback the next 3 years. Who knows? It's all about decision making. Normally, it doesn't make sense to go on the cheap with a quarterback. It rarely works. San Francisco, anomaly, because you have a great team with Brock Purdy. But they do get to Super Bowls, and they did get to a Super Bowl with porn star Jimmy. So that's an example of going cheap at the position and finding some success. Rookie quarterbacks can also be the exception. Patrick Mahomes winning a Super Bowl with the rookie contract. It doesn't, it's the best chance you have to win. The Chargers tried to do it with Justin Herbert. They never even got close. And now you're in cap hell because you have to pay Herbert a lot of money now. And the players around him are making too much. You have to restructure and cut guys, and it's just a mess. So the Bears screwed this up. The Steelers benefit from their stupidity. Justin Fields had no option. He has to stay in Chicago. He might not like it at training camp. He might want to sit out mandatory OTAs. You know what you do then? You fine him. And you do get fined. The NFL does. If you don't show up for mandatory OTAs, you get docked pay every day you don't show up. If he doesn't show up to training camp, he loses money. That's the way it works. So that's how I would have done it. Keep him. He would have showed up. He would have showed up because he wants to show face. He wants to look like a good person to other teams that might have interest in him at a certain point in time. But he gets to go to the Steel City, play under Mike Tomlin, try to prove something. We shall see with Justin Fields. I think this is a good landing spot for him, and I'm happy for him because I think he's better than what the league has really said to him over the last 48 hours. Los Angeles Chargers, we were just talking about the Chargers. They traded Keenan Allen, who had a great season last year, was healthy for a change. They traded him to the Bears for a 2024 fourth-round pick. And this is a good Bears trade. Now you have Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett, Deontay Swift, DJ Moore, with likely Caleb Williams at quarterback going into next season. The Bears were a 7-win team this year. They're not a bad football team. They can play. 100%. Keenan Allen, when healthy, is great. And he said, I'm not taking a pay cut after having the best season of my career, and I don't blame him at all. Shouldn't have to. He'll be 32 on April 27th, which isn't ideal, but he had 1,243 yards receiving last year, 7 touchdowns, 108 receptions. Super efficient. Over 900 catches over the course of his career, 10,000 yards, 59 touchdowns. So you're getting a good player in Keenan Allen. Two-headed monster at wide receiver. I like it. The Chargers didn't want to have to let him go. But they had to cut Mike Williams. They had to restructure Joey Bosa. They had to restructure Khalil Mack. Because they are in salary cap hell. As simple as that. But I like it for the Bears. It hurts the Chargers. I'm sure Justin Herbert's looking around going, I hope we're taking a wide receiver with the 5th overall pick. Jimmy Garoppolo, he's suspended the first 2 games this upcoming season because of PEDs. But he signed with the Los Angeles Rams. 1-year deal. He will go there to back up Matthew Stafford, so they get a veteran backup. He gets to stay in good weather. Goes from San Francisco to Vegas to Los Angeles. It's always good for Jimmy G. But I like that. You get a veteran behind Stafford. I don't think McVay wants a young guy right now. The Jets signed left tackle Tyron Smith, was with the Cowboys for over a decade. He only played for the Cowboys over the course of his career. 1-year deal worth up to $20 million with incentives if he can stay on the field, playing time, things of that nature. Be the blindside protection for Aaron Rodgers. When he's on the field, he's great. You look at his career so far, he very well could be a Hall of Famer. I think he's a 4-time first-team All-Pro, 7-time Pro Bowler. He's had neck problems, but the Cowboys, who have been really the cheapest team in free agency, Dak has a $59 million cap hit going into this season. so it really hinders them to do anything. They brought in Eric Kendricks to be a new middle linebacker playing for Mike Zimmer, but they released Michael Gallup. They released Leighton Vander Esch, the middle linebacker. So players are leaving. Tyron Smith leaves. Tyler Biadasz leaves. Dorrance Armstrong leaves. Stephon Gilmore remains a free agent. He was a corner for them last year. You lose Dan Quinn to the Commanders. Your defensive coordinator is gone. So a lot of changes in Big D. It's kind of strange where they are as a team right now. Are they a competitive team? Are they trying to win a Super Bowl next year? They say they will, but are they really? The Browns, this was a surprise. The Browns hire Mike Vrabel as a consultant. Mike Vrabel couldn't get a job as a head coach, left Tennessee. Why they fired him, I still don't know. He played at Ohio State, ties to the Ohio area. So he now works with the Cleveland Browns. I think it's a smart play. I think Vrabel's a good coach. If Kevin Stefanski is comfortable with it, not afraid of having him around with the pressure of him being there every day, I think it makes sense for sure. He's a good coach, good resource to have, certainly. And just just a smart guy. Also, Aaron Donald and Darren Waller retire. Aaron Donald is going to be a Hall of Famer. He 10 seasons, 7-time first team All-Pro, 10 Pro Bowls, Super Bowl winner, 3-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's walking into Canton, first ballot, easy. Him and Jason Kelce will be inducted together. It was a bit of a surprise, but I know he's been pondering. After they won the Super Bowl, he thought about retirement. But I thought, okay, the Rams have a pretty good team. But he'll be 33 in May. You retire healthy. I believe he has multiple children. And he was great. Only played for the Rams. Such a dominant force for a period of time, 4 or 5 years, was the best player in football, I think you could argue. One of the best players to ever play the position. And just dominant. He restructures his deal on the way out, so it's not such a large cap hit. The Eagles are shopping Hassan Reddick. Do the Rams call and see if they can get a deal done for him to come in, kind of take Aaron Donald's position? Reddick can be a sack machine, so something to watch there over the next little while. Darren Waller, really productive tight end, but really his story is perseverance. He was an alcoholic. Talked about it. And had to enter rehab. He fought through it. 8 seasons, 350 catches, 4,000 yards, 20 touchdowns, played 1 Pro Bowl. Not a Hall of Famer, certainly, but was productive. Played on some bad teams, unfortunately, over the course of her career, with the Raiders and then with the Giants last year. 31 years old, again, you leave with your health. And that's the big thing here. But congrats to those two guys. NHL this weekend, nothing big. I thought the officiating could be an issue. I want to bring that up. I mean, last night, the Leafs-Canes game, then you have an icing call against the Canucks that turned out to be a goal for Washington. They lose the game 2-1. That was a garbage call. So officiating is always an issue. But this afternoon, Looking forward to watching some golf. We'll be back on Tuesday. We'll talk some more hockey then. Also, Major League Baseball technically starts on Wednesday, so we'll do a chat about that. I know Joey Votto just hit a home run in his first at bat of spring training, so a big moment for the Blue Jays down there in Dunedin. We'll talk some baseball coming up later in the week. We'll get into some different things. So a little bit of a shorter show today, but I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Appreciate the support as always. Until next time, have a great rest of your Sunday. This is To The Point.